Chiron is known as the wounded healer in astrology, and its point in your natal chart shows us a wound that you have come to work on in this lifetime, both on a collective and an individual level. The sign that Chiron is in will actually show you the collective wound of your generation. However, its individual aspects and house placement in the chart will be unique to your own personal story. Chiron has sometimes been called the rainbow bridge, as its placement between Saturn and Uranus creates a pathway between the past and the future. Astrologer Barbara Claw says that in her book, Chiron, the Rainbow Bridge Between Our Inner and Outer Planets, that Chiron is truly an alchemist and a healer and an initiator and a visionary, a teacher of integrity and also bravery. The evolutionary astrologer Tom Jacobs suggests that Chiron works as an antenna, and where we can pick up the wounds of other people as well. So Chiron is our vision quest, so to speak, our journey towards understanding how we can begin to heal ourselves, and its point in our chart can show us where we feel the wound of abandonment or an internal wound which cannot be healed. However, we can use it to help heal others. It's the comfort of not being alone in our pain, and that gives us great beauty where there's fracture. In mythology, Chiron was born out of an adulterous relationship between the Titan Cronus, who is Saturn, and the nymph Philyra. So when the two lovers were discovered by his wife, Kronos fled the scene, transforming into a horse. She then gives birth to a son who was born half man and half horse. And because of this, she was really frightened and decided to abandon her true, authentic self by asking Zeus to change her appearance. Thus, she became a tree, it is known as the tree of linden, whose lovely bark could be used to prevent disease, and this creates the idea of vaccine. So Chiron was then adopted by Apollo, who then instructed him in, all sorts of arts and knowledge. Chiron became very intelligent and very patient and very kind, which really set him apart from the other centaurs, who were more impatient and rash. So Chiron would become a teacher, and he sort of created this family that he didn't have by birth. So here we have the rejection and the abandonment, but also the possibility to familiarize with those who are akin to him, creating this idea of friends being family. So when Chiron astrologically is touching the sun, we are really looking at the core identity, the ego of an individual being affected by chironic wounds. The sun's our ego, it's our vitality, it's our identity, and it's how we show up in the world. So when Chiron aspects the sun, the native is constantly being pushed into new levels of holistic understanding of healing. So the sun could be looked at as our will, our drive, and Chiron, when it aspects the sun, is constantly being challenged in some way with the will to survive. So the quality of life is something the native really needs to strive for, and it becomes more dependent on one's ability to heal and feel a sense of completeness. So for this reason, someone who has their sun aspecting Chiron may be constantly driven to exploring different avenues of healing throughout their life. Squares present challenges, and when the sun squares Chiron in a natal chart, it's a bit of a difficult aspect, often marking a life journey that's steeped in self-reflection and inner battles. This configuration in a natal chart symbolizes a clash between one's core identity and one's deepest wounds, and it creates this archetypical story where one learns how to fight and really for the will to survive. And they're fighting their demons quite openly and without judgment. So they may grow up feeling like they're not allowed to be their full selves, or that their light is actually dimmed by early experiences of shame or rejection or simply misunderstanding. However, this tension really allows them to gain unique insight into human suffering, and allows them to really develop extraordinary empathy and strength. So people who have this aspect have a remarkable gift. They have the ability to transform their struggles into profound wisdom and triumphs, not just for themselves, but for everyone else around them. They can really serve as role models of healing, turning their tragedies into triumph. So the beauty of this placement is the alchemy that it actually offers. The pain of Chiron may feel insurmountable, but the square provides the energy needed to face it head on. So over time, those with this aspect can really transform their wounds into remedies, not just healing their own pain, but using it as a foundation for wisdom and compassion. Their triumphs often lie in their ability to embrace their humanity and their imperfections and their vulnerabilities, while inspiring others to do the same. This transformation requires courage and persistence, but it leads to a profound sense of purpose. These individuals often find that the very areas where they felt broken can become their greatest sources of strength. They turn their struggles into a cause, a vocation, a message, embodying the idea that we are not defined by our wounds, but how we choose to heal and grow from them. The sun in the natal chart often is associated with the father or a significant paternal figure. So with Chiron squaring the sun, this relationship can carry a layer of complexity, often marked by deep awareness of the father's shortcomings or pain. These individuals may sense their father's humanity and their inner wounds so keenly that it actually becomes difficult to hold anger towards them or, resentment, even when it is justified. So this profound sympathy can be a double-edged sword. You have on the one hand this ability where that's, fostering deep compassion and understanding, but on the other hand, it can make it really challenging to set boundaries and fully process resentment, as they might see the father figure as a fellow wounded soul rather than a figure of authority. So this dynamic often plays into their lifelong journey of learning to honor their own feelings while also maintaining compassion for other people. So this journey of someone with the Sun square Saturn is about integration, learning to balance the radiant core self with the vulnerabilities that actually make them human. So they become teachers, healers, and great storytellers, whether they are consciously taking on these roles or not. Their lives are a living testament to the power of really facing inner demons and using the lessons learned to uplift other people. So, pain is not a sign of failure. It is a doorway to one's greatest gifts with this aspect. So by owning their story and really embracing the challenges that shape them, they embody the archetype of the triumphant healer. Their identity is not diminished by wounds, but elevated actually by their courage to face them bravely and courageously. Let's look at some case studies of people who have the sun square to Chiron in their chart so we can get a better image of this. The first case study that I think is really interesting is Jeremy Enoch, who was the vocalist for the band Sunny Day Real Estate. Sunny Day Real Estate was a band that was famous in the early 90s. They kind of kickstarted the emo movement, and they were from the Pacific Northwest. Now, this band became very influential after releasing their record Diary in 1994, and they became these pioneers, really, of the emo movement, and they had a lot of success for a period of time, but Jeremy Enoch's unexpected conversion to Christianity really led to this sudden breakup around the same time as their success. His bandmates, Nate Mendel and drummer William Goldsmith, didn't really share his newfound religious perspective. So, Enoch later explained that he had internal conflicts about his faith and how it fit in with the band's dynamic. So, like many bands of the era, creative disagreements and interpersonal dynamics played a role in their breakup. The pressures of sudden success and their, big reputation became really exacerbated because of these issues. And on top of that, their label Sub Pop was really struggling financially during the mid-90s. So the band was critically acclaimed, and, they were not also having the potential to make income the way that they would have liked as well. So Nate Mendel and William Goldsmith go off to join the Foo Fighters, and the band breaks up. Now, Jeremy Enoch suffered quite a bit. You can hear this obviously a lot in the lyrics of his music. And so this eruption, shall we say, was pretty profound at the time. So in a response to a distraught fan, Jeremy Enoch actually explained his conversion and the impact of his music with Sunny Day Real Estate in this letter. And I thought it was very Sun Chiron, so I thought I would share it with you. And it reads, "To Seth and other readers, I'm sorry that you are disturbed about the rumor of us breaking up. It is amazing how fast these things travel. Now, to begin with, I don't know where you got the idea that I am displeased with the new album. The new album is not even finished yet, so how could I dislike it? In January, I begin with my vocals, and I already love the music alone. When I finish my vocals and the final mix is done, then the decision can be made of whether I like it or not. If I did not like the new album, that would be no reason for me to quit the band. But when I look at our last album, Diary, I look at it as a diary of our emotions and everything when all went down. The same will be with the next album. I may not make the freak out in joy. It may not be the best version of my abilities, but it's who we were then. And yes, sir, I have given my life to Christ. For a long time, I dwelt on a lot of pain in my life. Pain I have tried to get rid of in many ways. I watched myself slowly shrivel up into a hopeless, bitter, and lonely person. One thing led to another, and I could not take it anymore, so I took a shot upon calling God. He answered me. My pain was gone. I was full of joy. I had hope again. And all that hope was squeezed out of me was replaced 10 times. I had tried this many different ways. None of them succeeded in saving me from hurt. Well, I was so full of joy that I wanted all of my friends to feel the same way that I did. So I told them, and of course they didn't understand. And since it was something that I had been going through myself, it's also such a far thing to grasp, and that is easier to blow it off. To give your life to Christ means to deny yourself, to completely live for Him. Doing this will change your comfort zone that you'd been trying to get in since you can remember. You then are a new person, desiring a whole new different life, a way of life than before. Most people definitely don't want their comfort changed, so they stay away from the idea of Jesus. The funny thing is, when you sincerely call upon Him, though you let yourself go, He fills you up with joy and peace that far surpasses any joy or peace or comfort that you could possibly feel from any earthly pleasure. Now, this applies to the band breaking up. Well, now that this has happened to me, naturally I want to sing about it. I want it to be what Sunny Day Real Estate is about, so that others out there will hear. But there are mixed feelings about what we could do and about me wanting to sing about Christ. One of the members doesn't mind me singing about Christ, and the other is very uncomfortable with the idea about singing of Jesus, and one didn't mind, but now all of a sudden one does. So I understand where they are coming from because I was there. Jesus isn't anything I want to compromise with, for He's more important than music, financial security, or popularity could ever be. So the idea of breaking up has been talked about. I have had different intentions. I have different intentions now, he says. I want to take the band on a different path than they. It's no longer financial freedom that once controlled me. but it is to expose people to the truth for their sake, and especially Jesus' sake. So who knows what is going to happen in the future? Every time I make a plan, it gets changed. The future is the future. And I hope that we come to a decision about the band that everyone is happy with. So it's interesting. Oftentimes when we choose to heal ourselves, it can be in a way that is really unpopular to the people around us. They cannot understand it. We can lose things, and that's the pain of the Sun square Chiron. In another case study, I had a client who had their Sun square to Chiron, and they went on this whole healing journey, as did I. I have the Sun also square to Chiron, so this is how also my experience. So it's interesting to see it in a different person's chart having the same kind of dynamic happening, where, you know, they went and they tried every type of therapy under the sun to relieve themselves of deep emotional pain and grief. And it wasn't until they found astrology and human design and, you know, a lot of different alternative ways of healing that they really found the thing that really worked for them and helped them kind of manage a lot of their symptoms and understand their dynamics. But when you begin to believe in things that are celestial, whether that is Jesus, whether that is astrology, it's not going to really always be the popular opinion. So it can also isolate them. And that was my experience. This was the client's experience as well. And it was something we bonded over. And in that, we kind of learned that we created our own family. We created our own dynamic. The people who get it, and the people who don't. And yeah, it really sucks to feel very isolated when you have different beliefs, and the thing that saves you, you know, ultimately isn't the popular thing. But that's, again, a very Sun square Chiron dynamic. So these stories kind of really highlight and kind of show often the battle between the Sun square Chiron and what is popular to the masses, and feeling like you fit in literally with the collective. Now, another example is Barbra Streisand. She is a perfect example of someone embodying the challenges and the potential for the Sun square Chiron in astrology. Early in her career, Streisand was told she wasn't traditionally beautiful. She was told that, you know, she didn't have the look she needed in order to succeed in show business. So critics often ridiculed her nose and her unconventional appearance. And that really aligns with her Sun being in Taurus, the sign of beauty. So rather than trying to conform to Hollywood's beauty standards, she famously refused to alter her appearance, making her distinctive look a true hallmark of her brand. And this is like a very textbook example of how the Sun squaring Chiron can push individuals to embrace and redefine perceived flaws. Her immense success as a singer and an actress and even a director reflects her ability to channel any insecurities into groundbreaking creative expression. Chiron aspects often point to someone who heals not just themselves, but others through their work. So Streisand's artistry has touched millions, breaking barriers for women in entertainment. And so she really illustrates the Sun square Chiron's ability to really transform vulnerability into a source of immense strength, becoming, you know, a role model for authenticity and also for resilience. Now, her relationship with her own father was marked by absence and longing, and this profoundly shaped her emotional life and her creative work as well. Her father, Emanuel Streisand, died when Barbra was just 15 months old, leaving her without any real personal memory of him. She described growing up feeling emotionally neglected, especially after her mother Diana remarried a man who reportedly showed little affection for her. And she often sought to understand her father through stories and letters. Emanuel was a highly educated man, a teacher and a scholar who valued literature and philosophy. Barbra expressed sadness over not having a chance to know him, and speculated that, they would have shared this deep intellectual connection. So again, we see this very complicated and sensitive relationship with who the father was in Streisand's life. So I think this really is another great example here. Yoko Ono is another person who has her Aquarius sun square Chiron in Taurus. And she had a really deeply emotional and complex relationship with her father, to say the least. He was a classical pianist and a wealthy banker who was pretty absent throughout most of her childhood. He maintained traditional Japanese patriarchal values, and he expected obedience and conformity from Yoko, who, was an Aquarius, whose whole identity was about individuality and non-conventional art forms. And she pursued more bohemian lifestyles. Yoko really inherited her father's musical sensibilities, particularly his love for classical music, which, influenced her experimental sound work, but his disapproval of her avant-garde pursuits and her bold personality likely fueled her desire to rebel against societal norms. Yoko's early experience of separation from her father really led to this reoccurring theme in her work: longing and isolation and the search for connection through authenticity. This emotional backdrop is really evident in much of her conceptual art and in her collaborations with John Lennon, where the themes of love and peace are central, along with autonomy. Yoko Ono's life is, a very powerful reflection of somebody embodying this aspect in their chart. As an avant-garde artist, and a peace activist, she consistently defied societal norms. Her innovative work in conceptual art and music, along with her really bold public presence alongside John Lennon, really exemplifies the Aquarius drive to revolutionize and challenge conventional normatives, especially when it comes to Taurus things, value systems like beauty, art. Yoko also faced rejection and harsh criticism throughout her career. Many saw her as a disruptive influence in the Beatles' world, often vilifying her without any understanding of her artistic contributions. Additionally, her early childhood was marked by wartime and hardship in Japan, where her once wealthy family lost much of its status and security, likely fueling a Chiron wound around material loss. Very Taurus theme. So rather than seeking validation through conformity, she embraced her unique vision of the world. Her experimental music and her performance art and her feminist activism transformed personal pain into boundary-breaking work that challenged how people perceive relationships and social structures. Chiron aspects often signify the healing of oneself very publicly as well. So even just works like Cut Piece and her ongoing campaigns for social justice are examples of how she transformed personal wounds into messages of healing and connections for others. I just even think about the song Yes, I'm a Witch that she wrote. The public tried to portray her as this demon, this witch. She broke up the Beatles. And she comes out and she says, yes, I am a witch. I am a bitch. My voice is real. My voice is truth. I don't fit in your ways. Very Sun square Chiron, owning her wounds, owning her individuality. This really illustrates the journey of transcending rejection and material instability by actually embracing radical authenticity and using creative rebellion as a path forward towards healing and liberation. And not just for herself, it wasn't selfish. She also did this on a very collective level. So ultimately, as you can see from these examples, this aspect is about transforming pain into purpose. It pushes individuals to confront their insecurities, to become resilient, and to use their experiences to heal both themselves and others around them, and to really forge the way towards individuality and autonomy. Truly, that phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, can be very true for these natives. So if you have the sun square to Chiron in your chart, you're really here to redefine strength. Society often equates strength with invulnerability. But if you have this aspect, your journey may actually be about, rediscovering strength in honesty and vulnerability and empathy. So acknowledge that your wounds are not weakness, but actually a part of your depth and your authenticity. Embrace radical self-acceptance. The sun squared Chiron often, will bring themes of feeling broken or fundamentally flawed. But the healing process really begins by understanding that worth isn't contingent upon perfection or even fitting in. So practice affirmations that really honor your value as you are, even when it feels uncomfortable. And seek relationships where you can feel seen and understood. Healing happens in community, so sharing your experiences can be profoundly healing. Often people with displacement become natural healers because they understand the intimate nature of pain. Be gentle with yourself. This can lead to harsh self-criticism, so practice speaking to yourself as you would a cherished friend, someone who's hurting. Compassion is so important here. So when we start changing the neural pathways in our brain and speaking with more compassion to ourselves, we really change the game. You can transform your pain into purpose. Explore creative or therapeutic outlets where you can channel your insights. Journaling, art, music, even volunteering can help turn the weight of your experience into something quite meaningful. Also, understand the power of boundaries. Sometimes people with displacement give too much, especially in the hopes of being accepted by others. So remember that setting boundaries is an essential part of self-respect and healing. One of the challenges with this aspect can be feeling defined by your pain or your insecurities, but instead you can reframe your wounds as your gift. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Try reframing it as, what wisdom can I gain from this experience? Often the lessons that you learn become exactly what others need to hear. And this positions yourself as a powerful guide. It's also helpful to do inner child work with this aspect. So visualizing and nurturing your younger self can be incredibly healing. Imagine offering your inner child the love, the acceptance, and the safety that you lacked. Also, it can be very helpful to adopt the art of both and thinking, which is super helpful if you are somebody that really struggles with, an all or nothing mindset. I'm a sun square to Chiron person. This is something I've personally struggled with. So it can be like, if I'm not X, Y, or Z, I'm worthless, right? If I don't have X, Y, or Z figured out, I'm worthless. That's an all or nothing mindset. So begin to hold space for contradictions. We call this the both and thinking mindset. I am wounded and I am whole. I make mistakes and I still have value. These types of phrases can be very helpful. Both and. I am wounded, but I am whole, right? So embracing this paradox can really dissolve that internal conflict that we feel. It's also important to cultivate self-trust, because this placement can create feelings of doubt or fear around asserting yourself. Building trust in your own voice and your own decisions is absolutely essential. So start small. Make a few low-risk decisions each day and celebrate honoring your inner wisdom, even if it feels, shaky at times. Shame is also something that accompanies this placement. So, instead of whispering about yourself negatively, start whispering your self-worth. Start by, identifying moments where shame even arises. Use grounding techniques, things like, naming sensations in your body, or even just repeating, "This is a story, not the truth," can be very helpful. Seek, safe places where you're not going to be judged. Now, another thing to keep in mind is when you have the Sun square to Chiron, we can choose our relationships unconsciously that, mirror early wounds, hoping to heal them. But instead of repeating old dynamics, we can prioritize relationships that actually foster mutual respect and healing, honesty, and, emotional safety. And, releasing the need to fix others, I think, is also very important. People with this aspect often become, natural caretakers or feel responsible for healing others. So recognizing that your healing journey is your own and others are responsible for their healing journey. You do not need to be that person all the time. And if they are asking for your help, if that is becoming your job, ask for payment. Your time is valuable. It's simple as that. Now, another thing that's important is redefining success. Traditional markers of success may feel hollow for, someone who has this placement. So spend time exploring what success means to you, whether that's inner peace or meaningful relationships or just creative fulfillment. And, also I think it can be very helpful to, recite some affirmations that really help you reaffirm your worth and your value. Things like, "My worth is inherent and it doesn't depend on perfection." It can be very helpful. "I can hold my wounds with love and still live fully." "I am learning to trust my voice and my heart." "I have the power to rewrite old stories and to create new truths." These are perfect affirmations for someone with the Sun square to Chiron. So if you have the Sun square to Chiron, this journey is all about alchemy, transforming that pain into purpose and reclaiming your light despite, its challenges. So please know, if you have this aspect, you are 10 times more powerful than you think you are. So embrace being the wounded healer. It is your purpose to step into that light, to be a healer, to be a messenger for all. Whether you are an artist, whether you're a writer, or whether you're simply acting as a role model, as a parent yourself, an aunt, an uncle, a friend. These are the things that will really bring you into your purpose. I wanted to leave you with these beautiful words from the acclaimed astrologer Liz Green. She says, "Chiron represents the wise animal, a natural power which its own volition has chosen to serve human evolution and consciousness, rather than remain blindly subject to the instinctual compulsions of the animal kingdom. Like the helpful animal in fairy tales, Chiron turns his back on the savagery of his instinctual nature in order to serve the evolutionary pattern which he deems to be the way forward for the whole life." But Chiron is at the wrong place at the wrong time. He's caught between a solar hero who personifies the strength of the human ego and the wild, untamed centaurs whom Chiron himself left behind. While the battle rages, Chiron takes no part. He has sympathy for both, perhaps because of this mediating role which deprives him of his natural aggression. He is accidentally wounded by a poisoned arrow aimed at another centaur, and the wound does not heal no matter what healing methods he applies to it. Ultimately, he retires to his cave, howling in anguish, begging for death. Zeus and Prometheus take pity on him and grant him the boon of mortality, allowing him to die in peace like any mortal, although once he was a god. And this terrible story implies a state of unfairness in life, which is hard for any individual and perhaps even harder for the idealistic individual involved in studies such as astrology. We want to believe that life is fair, that goodness is rewarded and evil is punished, at least in some other incarnation, if not this one. Here is a good creature who suffers through no fault of his own, a victim of the inevitable battle between evolution and inertia, consciousness and blind instinctually. Chiron is an image of that within all of us that has been wounded unfairly by life and is unescapable and reflects failings and flaws in the collective psyche, which is unfailingly clumsy in its efforts to progress. Because human beings are both solar hero and wild animal, and because our efforts to civilize ourselves over history have so often produced disastrous results, we have a legacy of unfairly inflicting pain, which produces repercussions through generations. Physical and psychological damages whose causes lie not in any individual, but not even in parental failing, but in genetic inheritance or collective disasters. In these spheres of our individual strivings fired by the sun, redefined and focused by the inner planets and given warmth and strength by Saturn, we are thwarted or damaged by forces in life, in history, in society, and in the collective psyche over which we have no control, and as for which, as individuals, we cannot be blamed. I love this. It's one of my favorite takes on Chiron. It reminds you of your humanhood. It reminds you, unfortunately, life is not fair. But if we can work and put these puzzle pieces back together, we can create a better world for others around us. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. People with Sun Chiron aspects are creating new worlds in the being. Worlds where vulnerability is a strength and we can't feel the shame of what wounds us, and we don't self-inflict pain any more than necessary. We learn to understand each other and love each other, warts and all. These people are important for society. They change the cultural landscape for others. Whether it was, Barbra Streisand changing the cultural landscape of what beauty is with her Taurus sun, or Yoko's, individuality with her Aquarius sun, marching to the beat of her own drum, imagining again worlds into being, taking what is broken and creating what the Japanese call kintsugi out of it. As the famous saying goes, that's how the light gets in the cracks, right? Another beautiful kind of metaphor for the sun square to Chiron. So with that, I leave you guys today, and I hope that you enjoyed this little lecture, this little essay on the sun square to Chiron. And as somebody who has this placement personally in my own chart, I'm sending you guys all the love and healing that you need on your journey. And I hope that this video helped you feel a little bit better about what, causes you pain. Smile. You've made it through, and we did it together.